Vince McMahon offers Pat McAfee a WrestleMania 30 match, plus Vince McMahon on the Pat McAfee show. We're going to break all of that down. He's revealed who is inducting The Undertaker into the WWE Hall of Fame. Drew McIntyre's WrestleMania 38 match is also now official, plus Tyson Fury back inside of a WWE ring. Is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? All this and more in today's WWE News. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into today. So let's start off talking about Pat McAfee when it comes to WrestleMania 38. The rumors are true. Pat McAfee is going to be competing in a match. He's going to be returning to the ring on the grandest stage of them all. But we don't know his opponent yet, even though the heavy rumor is going to be that it's going to be Vince McMahon. It could be revealed even tonight on SmackDown on Fox. Now, WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon appeared on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, which we're going to talk about in a second, and said he'd like to offer McAfee something special. Vince went on and said he knows McAfee loves what WWE does and he's part of the team, and Pat is Pat, which is why it works. Vince then offered McAfee the chance to actually wrestle a competitive match at WrestleMania 38. McAfee responded and accepted the offer, saying that would be a dream come true. Vince said, unlike when McAfee was a punter for the Indianapolis Colts, he can now be a linebacker in the ring. Now, of course, it's been rumored that McAfee will wrestle McMahon at WrestleMania, but that was not confirmed on the show. McAfee brought up the internet chatter about his return to the ring, and Vince said they will find him a worthy opponent and work it out. McAfee said the offer was incredible and asked if it's the real deal, and Vince indeed confirmed it would be. So, McAfee is indeed returning to the ring. He's going to be wrestling a WrestleMania match. Again, we don't know who the opponent is going to be yet. The rumor is going to be it's going to be Vince McMahon. It's going to be McAfee versus McMahon in a smoke and mirrors kind of situation, in that whilst Vince McMahon will be billed to be Pat McAfee's opponent, in reality it will most likely be Austin Theory. Vince McMahon won't take any bumps, maybe one. I don't know who wins that match, it must be said. I think Vince has to win, right? Surely Vince has to win that match. Unless McAfee pins Austin Theory. I don't know. Just to me, it makes sense that Vince McMahon would win that match. Grandest stage of them all, 76 years of age, WrestleMania. To me, that seems the likely outcome, the likely reality. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we'll see. But I'm sure, as I mentioned, we'll probably get more of an update, more of an explanation about that. Surely they're going to expand on it tonight on SmackDown anyway, but the McAfee match has been confirmed. But speaking of that interview in general, it must be said, Vince McMahon was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, and there's a lot that was spoken, so I can't get into all of it, obviously. I think if you want to go and watch it, go and watch it. I would very much recommend it. Of course, it's Vince McMahon's real first televised interview outside of a WWE setting in about 15 years, right? Legitimately. Obviously, the last live interview Vince McMahon did was on the Steve Austin live podcast on the WWE Network. That was 2014. Prior to that, I don't know the last time he did a live interview. It's been a really, really long time, in about 15 years, that he's done a live interview outside of the WWE. And obviously, whenever Vince does an interview, because he is so, evasive, and he is so reclusive in the sense that he doesn't do interviews, and he's very combative, and every time Vince McMahon does an interview, you realize how much of an odd guy he is, and how much of he's got that, they say about billionaires, or they say about CEOs, chairmen of companies, that they have to be wired different, and Vince McMahon is. And all of those stories you hear about him over the years, whenever he does an interview, you can really then see them. So that's why it's always fascinating. So I don't think yesterday's interview was fascinating in the sense of, it was a great interview, Pat McAfee did a great job. It's fascinating because Vince McMahon's just a fascinating guy and he doesn't do interviews. That being said, I thought it was a great interview. McAfee asked questions you would expect him to ask. I mean, Vince didn't really drop anything earth-shattering. It was kind of just more of the business mindset, the business philosophy. A couple of interesting stories about Vince McMahon when he's younger, about being moved up from, was it a B+ to an A-, and knocking on the doors of his professors and teachers. I thought that was really interesting. Talking about business in general, streaming platforms, the deal in Saudi Arabia, the difference from being a private company to a publicly traded company, kind of spoke about the releases and said it's just business at the end of the day, and all that kind of stuff. It was what you would tend to expect, but I think the real thing that they did well, and I do think that McAfee and whoever really came up with this idea, when it came to interviewing Vince McMahon, has to be credited for, is they really humanized him. I think they did. And Vince, I think, came across really well, better than he has come across in, I mean, we've spoken about this, it was his first live interview in 15 years, but historically, whenever he's done a live interview, he doesn't come across well. Mostly because when he's talking to journalists, it's in a journalist's best interest to try and trip him up, or they're already looking down on not just the WWE, but on pro wrestling in general. They turn their nose up at it, oh, it's fake, and all this kind of stuff. And Lord knows there's enough, skeletons in the closet of Vince McMahon and professional wrestling in general. So they focus on that, which is fair. But this was more about Vince himself. This was more about how he's been able to be so successful, his mindset, his lifestyle, still working out at 76 years of age and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating, because it had an insight to Vince. Again, not because it was a particularly unbelievable interview, but just because it's rare. It's very rare. And it was gripping. It was enjoyable. I think you do, I suppose, have to credit Pat McAfee for that. The last two wrestling interviews he's done, whether it be Brock Lesnar or Vince McMahon, he's been able to do which not a lot of people have been able to do, and that show a side of either Brock or Vince that nobody's been able to do, like publicly. And I think you do have to credit Pat McAfee for that. So obviously, absolutely riveting interview. And again, I can't really do it all justice because it's about nearly 2 hours long, hour 15 minutes, hour and a half. So it's great. It's well worth a listen. And again, Pat McAfee asks the questions you would probably expect him to ask. He does bring up the likes of AEW, and he does bring up competition and some maybe more difficult subjects, but he doesn't, really probe that much. But of course, he's not going to. He's employed by Vince McMahon. So he's not going to ask the super difficult questions, but nor should he. And it wasn't really that kind of interview, in fairness. It was more of a character piece. It was more of a background on Vince McMahon and his upbringing and his philosophies on things. So I thought it was great. I thought it was tremendous. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it. And very, very enjoyable and arguably the best Vince McMahon interview in terms of, maybe other interviews that he's done have been way more entertaining and more newsworthy because of some of the things he said and done during it. But in terms of what Vince McMahon and his people and the WWE will be happy with, they'll be thrilled with that interview. Absolutely thrilled, because he wasn't restrained. He was swearing, he was dropping F-bombs and all that kind of stuff, and it was a relaxed environment, but it was a relaxed Vince McMahon, and it wasn't combative, and it wasn't. I just think they'll be really happy. From a PR perspective, they'll be really happy with it, I think. Speaking of McMahon, though, he announced during the interview with Pat McAfee that he will be inducting The Undertaker into the 2022 WWE Hall of Fame class. WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon is set to induct The Undertaker into the WWE Hall of Fame during WrestleMania 38 weekend. Vince appeared on the Pat McAfee show yesterday and announced that he will be doing the honors for Taker as he goes into the 2022 class of the WWE Hall of Fame. Vince praised Taker, the man and the character, and said this induction will be one of the hardest things he's ever had to do because he loves The Undertaker. Now, Vince has inducted just a few names over the years. Former executive and mayor James Dudley in 1994, Steve Austin in 2009, and Donald Trump in 2013. They didn't mention the Trump thing, and probably rightfully so. They just mentioned, you've only done it for Steve Austin, right? Yes. But Vince doesn't really like to be involved in the Hall of Fame. Behind the scenes, absolutely. He's in Gorilla, he's producing, it's a television show at the end of the day, so he's in Gorilla, he's producing things, he's directing things. There is an edict, do not thank Vince McMahon during the Hall of Fame speech, and he explained that yesterday because he doesn't like thank yous, and it shouldn't be about him. Let's face it, every single person that goes into the Hall of Fame of WWE could thank Vince McMahon. It's his company. The reason they're there is because of him, and it's his decision whether they go in or not. And I kind of get it from his perspective. Like, he doesn't want the entire night to be a one big thank you fest to him because it's not about him. It's about the people going in. So I understand that. And I know people look at it of, it's just a Vinceism. But you know what? I think I would be the same. I don't want people to be patting me on the back for the entire night. It's not about me. It's about them. So it's going to be certainly very interesting to see him do that, and it makes sense. I know people were saying who could induct The Undertaker. Is it going to be Kane? Is it going to be Bruce Pritchard? Is it going to be whoever? Vince is the guy. It's their relationship that's been so key over the years, and whilst maybe Vince, I think if you believe the legend, Vince is the guy that came up with the gimmick. He's always wanted to do an old Western Undertaker kind of style, and it's his greatest creation. It's the greatest character in WWE history. So he's the right guy to do it. The Undertaker has since commented on this. He said, quote, "Over 30 years of long roads traveled, countless hours of television, and one hell of a ride together. Couldn't think of anyone better to put me in the WWE Hall of Fame than Vince McMahon. One final ride together, old timer." So that's the Undertaker's comments on the WWE chairman and CEO Vince McMahon inducting him into the WWE Hall of Fame. Speaking of WrestleMania weekend, we have another match announced, and it's the one I predicted here on the channel, and it's not a good one. It's Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin. Confirmed. That's WrestleMania. That's a WrestleMania match, right? That's the WrestleMania match we want to see. Drew McIntyre has gone from competing for the WWE Championship 2 years in a row, main eventing WrestleMania 36. I know there was nobody there, but he still beat Brock Lesnar in the main event of WrestleMania 36. Last year, he was in the opening match of WrestleMania 37, the first match in front of fans in God knows how long for the WWE Championship against Bobby Lashley. He was expected to win. Plans changed. Fast forward a year later, he's wrestling Happy Corbin on night one. Oh dear. Now, McIntyre has feuded with Corbin and Madcap Moss for a few months now, and this match has been rumoured for the grandest stage of them all. WWE confirmed the match for night one of WrestleMania 38, or as they're calling it, WrestleMania Saturday. Drew McIntyre himself has commented on this because a lot of people went, "That sucks." And if you're him, you must know that sucks. The announcement led to a significant amount of negative feedback from fans on social media, with a general feeling that McIntyre deserves better for WrestleMania. WrestleMania 36, as I mentioned, saw McIntyre win the WWE Championship from current champion Brock Lesnar in the main event. WrestleMania 37 featured Drew McIntyre being defeated by Bobby Lashley in the opening match. McIntyre responded to the feedback and said his time at the top of WrestleMania will come again. He also gave praise to Corbin. He said, quote, "I've seen your responses and I appreciate the support. I'm in this industry to win titles and be in marquee fights. My time will come again. Corbin is a hell of a competitor. However, he's proved to be about as smart as he is funny, picking a fight with me." Look, when it comes to this match, like I said, it's not WrestleMania. It's not a WrestleMania caliber match, and I don't think that's disrespectful towards Happy Corbin or Baron Corbin, whatever you want to call him, because it's not. It's just that's the gimmick sucks. The Happy Corbin gimmick sucks. McIntyre should be doing something better, and I understand what he's saying. You can't be involved in the big main event match every year, but you can also have something of substance, which this is not. It's not something of substance. The character sucks, and for McIntyre, he has been a victim, once again, of WWE's mismanagement of not being able to book a top babyface. They can't do it. McIntyre had all of this hope and goodwill of the fans, WWE champion, even though he won it in an empty arena. He still had the support of the fans. He was champion for nearly a year. He carried Raw during the pandemic, and the crowd on social media, granted, but the fans started to turn on him slightly, even when he lost the title and fans came back, because he'd been booked terribly, absolutely terribly, and he was getting opportunities that he shouldn't have been getting at the WWE Championship, and then given the sword, and then reciting Scottish folk tales, all that kind of stuff. How on earth is that a babyface in 2022? And that was the problem. That's why the crowd started to turn, and that's why now McIntyre finds himself where he does, of no fault of his own. By the way, no fault of his own, but because of bad writing and bad storytelling. That's not Drew McIntyre's fault. Now, I think it's very likely he's going to be facing Roman Reigns after WrestleMania for, I would have said the unified WWE Championship, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It's going to be a unified bout, which is going to be split again. I don't know how that's going to work, but he's going to be facing Roman Reigns after WrestleMania for the championship, seemingly. That's why he was moved to SmackDown in the first place. So he will get a title match. It's just going to be after WrestleMania, seemingly. And maybe that's the reason why we should calm down when it comes to this situation. Finally, Tyson Fury. Now, Tyson Fury, of course, he's been rumored to be facing Drew McIntyre for the last couple of years, right, in this big proposed stadium show over here in the UK. Well, Tyson Fury has indeed confirmed that he will be returning to WWE in the future. During an interview with Give Me Sport, the boxing star said, quote, 1,000,000% you will see me in WWE again. 1,000,000%. While no official timescale was given by the British boxing world champion, it is clear that a return to wrestling is on his mind. Of course, the current WBC heavyweight champion originally debuted within WWE at the 2019 Crown Jewel event. He faced Braun Strowman in Saudi Arabia, winning via countout. The 8-minute encounter finished after the boxer knocked Strowman out of the ring with a punch. However, on the following episode of SmackDown, the two men ended up working together. and they had a confrontation with the B team. Remember that? Remember the B team? Tyson Fury has recently revealed plans to retire from the sport of boxing soon. He has an upcoming fight against Dillian Whyte in April inside Wembley Stadium, which I'm very looking forward to. But he claims after that his career will be finished. If the 33-year-old does actually retire, it could lead to a return to the pro wrestling world. I don't think he'll retire after the Dillian Whyte fight. I think he still wants to fight Usyk and possibly AJ. So they're the two fights he's waiting for, in my opinion. But of course he's going to wrestle for WWE again. There have been plans for him to come back to WWE. I mean, you have to remember that his initial WWE run happened right before the pandemic, right at the end of 2019. There were plans for him to possibly wrestle at WrestleMania the following year. There were plans for him to face Drew McIntyre, who would have been the WWE champion at that time, in a stadium show in 2020 over here in the UK, possibly Wembley Stadium. Everything got cancelled because of the pandemic. We had to wait 2 years. So now that things are starting to open up again, we'll probably see Tyson Fury back. He has a great relationship with WWE. He has a great relationship with Vince McMahon. And of course they want the undefeated boxing heavyweight champion to be in their company, right? So I expect Tyson Fury to be in WWE probably at some point this year, frankly. Again, you've got that UK stadium show that's going to be some point in August or September. Tyson Fury will be on that show. If that show happens, Tyson Fury will be on it. I guarantee it. Absolutely guarantee it. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news stories. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.